Welcome back to the Chow Time Pod. It's your host, Red. I got a video today from Courtney Ryan. She did a video on myths that men need to stop believing in. And we'll see if we agree with some of those myths or not, or we'll have a little discussion. So please like and subscribe down below. I'd really appreciate that. And let's get to that chow. It's chow time.
Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, I'm Courtney Ryan, and in this video, we're going to be going over some dating myths that you should stop believing. With all of the advice circulating on the internet now, there's bound to be some not so great advice out there, or really just some things that I would personally suggest thinking a little bit more critically about. I don't think any of these will lend a helping hand to you in your dating life in any way, and actually might end up doing the complete opposite. Right. So the first myth I want to talk about is that there's only one person out there for you. And I know this is a bit of an unpopular opinion, but try your best to hear me out on this, because I do believe it is so limiting to think that there's only one person out of the 8.6 billion people on the planet that you could potentially be compatible with. That's simply just not true.
Yeah, we talk about this, that scarcity mindset that you can only get one or two women, or there's only one or two women out there for you. No, there's plenty of women with plenty of different personalities, plenty of different, traits that can mingle with you. Not everything has to be perfect. Most of us men aren't like a lot of these delusional women where you're thinking, oh, there's only one for me and he has to be this one. He has to check all these lists. For us men, as long as they check a few lists, there's quite a few women that could check a few of those lists, and we could just pick from there. So there's plenty of women out there, man. Don't think that there's only the one. Neo isn't out there for you.
And it's rather delusional to think that way. And I know when you really break it down, you have to consider where you live and the age demographic and all these little things. So 8.6 billion isn't necessarily the number that we're working with, but still, it's a lot of people. There's a lot of fish in the sea, as they say.
Correct.
And I'm going to read you this little excerpt from the incredible psychotherapist Esther Perel, because I think she says this wonderfully. She says, dating to find the one is extremely limiting and often leads to major disappointment. There's never going to be one perfect person whose love is so powerful that it checks every box, heals all our wounds, and makes us want to delete the apps. And putting the pressure on a romantic connection, especially early on, can prevent a dalliance from developing into something more. Perfection is the enemy of the good, especially in relationships. Why do we carry these expectations of potential partners when we know that we're not perfect either? Instead of looking for perfection, look for potential. Great potential is fundamental to meaningful growth, and couples are supposed to grow and change. There is a difference, as Justin Lee Miller explains, between destiny relationships and developmental relationships. Developmental relationships are the ones that ebb and flow, navigating life's many issues and growing from them. Destiny relationships, those of fate and perfection and the one, often break when the mythology of perfect love with the one reveals itself in the cracks of our relationship.
This explains how a lot of women view love and real relationships right here. This whole excerpt from this doctor pretty much is saying most women are looking for that one, not one that checks literally every single one of their boxes. So I'll agree with her. Some men do have this issue, but this is such more of a women's issue than it is a men's myth or whatever.
So in summary here, the idea of the one is not true because it places unrealistic expectations on finding a perfect partner and overlooks other sources of happiness and fulfillment in life. And while we're on the topic of dating myths, you should stop. The next myth that I'm going to talk about is be persistent and chase her equals she'll eventually like me. And this is so beyond false. I can't even begin.
Damn, she hit the nail on the fucking head on this one. This is a big myth that a lot of men
to comprehend. This is a prime example of a guy who doesn't know when to walk away and can't read the often very obvious room and signs that a girl is not interested, and thinks if he continues to chase her, that she'll eventually come around.
Persistent is not key when it comes to chasing women.
And it's wrong for a few key reasons here, those being, number one, chasing quite literally means that someone is running away from you.
Correct.
And you are trying to catch them, which is not a great way to start any relationship. Secondly here, this is often how men end up coming across as creepy to women because they don't know how to read the signs that a woman is not interested, they don't know how to read the room, and they continue to push on and to try and be persistent. And while those attributes and qualities are really great in other areas of your life, Not so much with romantic relationships, especially trying to get someone to like you or convince someone to like you, because
So how she said it is correct, guys. The more you do this, the more that the woman sees you as creepy, because she's in her mind somewhat told you already, even though she didn't really say anything too much, but you should have figured it out that she's not interested. And the more you pursue someone that's not interested, Courtney's correct. They are running away from you. Why bother? Go find someone else that is willing to meet you halfway instead of just running away from you.
You can only invite someone to love you, but you cannot force it. Sometimes no amount of trying.
My favorite saying is you can lead a horse to water, but you can't force it to drink.
No amount of being persistent or, chasing after her will change her mind or make them like you back. Nope. And I think in general, it's really important to know when it's time to walk away in dating so that you're not wasting your time running after someone or chasing after a girl who has made it very clear that she's not interested in you. And also, again, this often makes men really come across in this creepy way. I've done many videos about being creepy, and one of the main things I always try to talk about is this not knowing when to walk away thing, or not leaving women alone when they're not interested in you. So you guys need to know that being persistent and chasing after someone who does not like you, or continuing on not knowing when to walk away, does not mean that she's just automatically going to like you. It just means that you're wasting your time and you're probably coming across desperate and not in a way that you want to. So big myth here. Please understand this one.
Yeah, this myth is perpetuated a lot by movies and stories, especially movies nowadays, where you'll get the guy does everything, messes up, and then the girl leaves for some time, and then she comes back, and the guy's trying to get her back and all this. It may happen occasionally, like rarely, that the girl will fall in love with him after he's, pursuing her for years and years, but that shit doesn't happen often. Not often enough to even care about, to tell you the truth. Not even often enough to even talk about. Women don't want to be stalked, in a sense.
The next myth that I'm going to talk about here is that you need to feel a spark. And I can almost guarantee
Oh my God, this one, I can't. This is how women think. So, okay, let's see what she has to say.
Or of, he's a great guy, but I just didn't feel a spark. Maybe a woman has even said this to you. Also commonly mentioned and related to this one is love at first sight, which is another myth that actually is a bit concerning.
Yeah,
but as it turns out, this spark people often talk about is actually a misattribution to arousal and isn't reliable for a long-term healthy relationship. It often is quite the opposite.
Yep.
And sometimes the spark isn't necessarily a good thing.
Well, I mean, men aren't the one that use this term, the spark, and or the feelings or the energy or whatever it is. Men are going about it pretty clean slated, where women are the ones that are kind of, oh, it has to be this, it has to be that.
People can often misinterpret mixed signals or mind games and the anxiety that comes along with those things as chemistry or the so-called spark that we hear about. And we can also miss out on a really great partner by being so quick to write them off if that initial spark isn't there.
Again, this is more for women than men. I don't think very many men, I'm not going to say very many, I don't think majority of men are going through this. It's women that are going through this spark that they're talking about. Men don't go about like, oh my gosh, she gave me the tingles. Like I need to be with her because she gave me the tingles. I don't think men think that way. But you know what? Maybe the simps may think that way, but the normal level-headed men, it's not the same.
When we first meet someone, we form an initial impression, which is often mostly based on appearance because this is all we know about them at this point. But as we get to know people more, they can often grow on this and we begin to see them differently. So sometimes if that initial spark isn't there, it doesn't mean that you're not compatible. It doesn't mean that you couldn't work out romantically. Sometimes it's like a slow burning flame rather than, an explosion. And that's okay. And I've just heard this so often, mostly with women saying things like, I just didn't feel a spark, or he was an amazing guy, I had so much fun, but I just...
At least Courtney admits that it's mostly from women. So, okay, I'm happy that, because again, I don't think this It might happen to men, but I don't think it's too often.
Didn't feel that chemistry there. Sometimes things take a little bit of time, again, and as you get to know someone, you know, people reveal themselves to you, or you learn that you're more compatible than you initially thought. So just because you don't have these crazy sparks in the very beginning doesn't mean that you can't have a happy, fulfilling relationship potentially with that person.
I think it's kind of the opposite. The people that give you these sparks are usually people that don't give you really good relationships, from what I can see from, you know, TikTok and my own relationships. The people that have always given me like, oh yeah, I want this person, has never been that person. Everybody that I'm just like, they're okay. Go out with them a couple times. They've always like grown on me.
And doesn't actually relate to compatibility. Sometimes we just aren't compatible, and that's okay too, but that's a very different thing than not feeling a spark. My next myth, it hurts me, I've talked about this so many times, is this you should play hard to get thing, or really any other dating games or mind games
Is she saying that men need to play hard to get?
For that matter. This right here is a red flag and a sign of immaturity and insecurity. And someone who is confident in themselves and the value that they bring into a relationship doesn't need to play hard to get or send mixed signals. A healthy and fulfilling relationship is built on trust and effective communication, two things that do not exist when you're playing mind games with someone. It's also a bit of a double-edged sword because although it can create an air of mystery or intrigue in the beginning and make someone more interested in you, as all these toxic people tell you online, it can also be off-putting and make someone lose interest in you altogether, specifically a healthy person who doesn't want to be with someone who is playing all these crazy mind games with them.
Oh, this one's a tough one. I'm going to say I somewhat disagree, because men kind of have to play the game. They cannot go about it the way women do. We kind of have to do some of these things, like replying to a woman right away when she texts you. It is literally a sign of you have nothing better to do when you reply right away. There's just little nuances in these things that these, you know, coaches do say that matter, and it actually is very effective. This is the part where I think she is a little bit off, because she's not a man, right? She's going about it very womanly. Most of this is actually from the women's point of view, from what I could tell also. So
we don't have time for that. It can be incredibly frustrating for the other person, and they might start to feel like they're wasting their time and then move on to someone else who is more responsive and not playing hard to get or playing other games with them.
So she says this, but data shows the person that ignores her the most usually gets the most attention.
It can also come across as disinterest. If you're not making any effort to show your interest, the other person might assume that you're not interested in them and then move on from you, which could lead to misunderstanding and missed opportunities for the people who are playing hard to get. And also, all these games have to be freaking exhausting, especially if you're not really interested in the other person and you're just like playing these mind games with them. Like, if you have time to do that, find a hobby. I'm concerned for you. It takes a lot of effort to maintain a facade that can leave you feeling drained, but also if you're actually interested in the other person and you're playing hard to get, or, you know, putting on this facade that you're not into them, no healthy person is going to accept that behavior, because a healthy human would have boundaries for themselves and would listen to my advice of, you know, if someone is showing you that they're not interested in you, do not waste your time.
I love her because she's very optimistic, I guess, about this. Yes, it would be nice if we didn't have to play games, if women would also not play games with us, but that's not how the world works. So this myth that she's trying to like debunk, I don't think it's a myth at all, because the world still works this way. You still have to play games. You still have to show yourself in a certain way. You still have to text in a certain way to get to play the game. If you don't even do some of these basics, like take care of your looks and all these things, you don't get to play the game. So you have to at least do the bare minimum on this game.
You shouldn't be trying to change someone's mind or chase after someone who is making it very clear by their words and their actions that they're not interested in you.
I agree with that.
Specifically actions here too. I always tell you guys to watch what people do and not necessarily what they say. So if someone is ghosting you, blowing you off, playing hot and cold, breadcrumbing you, all the terms, there's about 1.5 million of them online now, all these hot topics and keywords. But really my point is, if you watch what people do and not what they say, any healthy person is not going to put up with someone who is playing all these crazy games or playing hard to get.
I'll admit that I guess I am not dating any healthy people. I'll admit this then. If she is saying this is how healthy people would not want to do things, it seems like I'm not dating any healthy people at all, because all these women seem to want this.
So immature, it's insecure, and it's not the way you want to start a relationship, and certainly won't lead to anything happy, fulfilling, or healthy.
Oh, I kind of knew that already. Okay.
My next myth is that it's too late for you. I get this question a lot, and it honestly breaks my heart every time someone asks me this, because love does not have an expiration date. Your timeline does not need to look like everyone else's. I cannot tell you how many people have messaged me about this, who have left comments like this. Courtney, I'm 30 years old. Is it too late for me to find love? Courtney, I'm 50 years old and divorced. Is it too late for me to find love again? The answer is no. It's never too late, because like I said, love does not have an expiration date, and your timeline does not necessarily need to look like everyone else's. I think comparison is truly the thief of joy. And I don't think you do yourself any favors by telling yourself, it's too late for me, I'll never find someone, because then you end up approaching dating with a scarcity mindset, as I've mentioned 1 million times before on this channel, or you just don't try at all, which is automatically failing. I think you have to, believe in yourself enough to give yourself the chance to try. That way you can at least say that you tried, right? But really the point of this, and what I want you to understand here, is that it's never too late to be loved. Please understand that.
I think this is more, again, women's questions. Women would ask this more often. I don't think as many men would ask this, because most men know that we can still find love at later ages. Just because, even if the woman wants a kid, we can still give them a kid. If the woman wants stability, we can give them stability. Everything that a woman wants from a man from 30 plus on, you should mostly have all that already. So I don't know. This one's more for women, I think, than men. I don't think a lot of men are, this. But I do believe you can, for men, yeah, you can find love at almost any age. Almost any age. For women, it's a little bit harder. You can, but it's harder. There's going to be men out there in their 50s that don't want kids, that don't want these things, that would love a 40-year-old woman to live with and be partners with. I'm sure they're out there. But if you're looking for a family and solidarity with a man, you kind of need kids with them. So that's just my opinion. I somewhat disagree with half of what she says. So
People find love at all different stages in their lives, not just when they're in their 20s. And my audience here is mostly men, so I'll speak to you directly when I say this. Men don't have to worry about a biological clock the way that women necessarily do. So if you're a guy who's like, I'm 30, I'm 35, I'm pushing 40, I really want to start a family, there really is no timeline for you. So it's not something that you really have to worry about as much. Consider yourself lucky in that regard. Yeah. Because I know a lot of women who, they're nearing 30 or they're in their 30s and they haven't found anyone yet. And they're feeling a lot of pressure because of this biological clock that is ticking. And, if you're a woman who wants to have kids.
When they say, would you rather be a man or a woman? As much as how hard this life is as a man, I would always pick a man. Almost always.
That unfortunately is something that you have to be mindful of, right? But again, most of my audience here is men, so I'm speaking to you when I say, I promise you, it is not too late. I know many men who have met their significant others in their 50s or even their 60s. People in nursing homes meet people that they end up loving and marrying. So please don't think that it is too late for you. I promise it is never too late to be loved. This next dating myth that I want to talk about here is, I'll be happy when I get a girlfriend. Ooh. And to be honest, whatever you finish the statement with, even if it's not a girlfriend, it really doesn't matter, because regardless, it's putting way too much emphasis on circumstances or things that are out.
You're putting your happiness on a person that you never met before. That's the basis of this. You're literally hoping that you'll find someone that's going to bring you so much happiness that you're going to be fulfilled. That's not how it works. You should be happy on your own, happy with your life, happy with yourself, happy the things that you're doing already, and then you find someone to enhance that happiness, not find someone to find that happiness.
Out of your control, or other people. This is such a myth and a trap way of thinking that I see so many people fall into, and I think it goes hand in hand with the idea that your partner should complete you, which also isn't true and isn't necessarily healthy. You can be happy without a girlfriend. In fact, the happier you are on your own, the more likely you'll be to find and attract a
She's right.
healthy partner to be with. And keep in mind here, your relationship should absolutely bring you joy and enhance your happiness, but it should not be the sole proprietor of your happiness. It should not be your happiness. I do think it's really important to find peace in being alone and find fulfillment in being single. I think a lot of people, again, approach dating with this scarcity mindset because they're tired of being alone. They feel like they don't have any options, so they just have to settle for the first person that comes along, or they have to get this girl to like them even though you don't really like her. So it just creates, honestly, a huge mess. And I think really the more confident, the more sure you are in yourself, the happier and more fulfilled you are on your own, it also makes you a much better partner too.
That was some good chow, you know. Even in my personal life, I would agree with that. Yeah, I did what she did. She said on the last one, where happy wife, happy life. You know, her happiness was my happiness. My goal was to make her happy. As long as she was happy, I was happy. You know, and yeah, that's a horrible way to go about it. Why? Because they could leave. There goes all of you've built for your own happiness, gone. In a sense. And if you had it yourself without another person, it's hard for someone to take it away. At least through my personal experience. It may be different for other people, but no, she did some. Those are great little myths, but again, half of them I'm kind of meh about. Most of it, I feel like it's more women that are in this boat than men are. So please like and subscribe down below. I'd really appreciate that. And I'll catch you guys next time. It's chow time.